Well, in a moment, we'll be talking with the Northern Ireland Secretary-Theresa Villiers. But first, we're joined from Westminster by Pat Finucane's son, Michael. Michael, very strongly bearing in mind the scale of your loss, isn't it a little over the top to call this a whitewash? This is unquestionably one of the most damning reports into the failures of British and the collusion of British security and intelligence in Northern Ireland ever.
Well, I'm afraid, once again, Mr. Snow, we have to take the author of the report's word for that. None of the information, none of the evidence that he assessed was done in public. No one can know to what extent he really got to the bottom of all of the controversy that surrounds this case. We must accept his report at face value, and we must accept the assurance of the Prime Minister. And given that this review is in itself a broken promise, given that it is an embodiment of a government reneging on a commitment made during the peace process, I'm not prepared to accept the assurances of the author or the Prime Minister that this has in fact got to the truth.
So you doubt the construct that there was collusion by MI5, collusion by the army, by the police, in the culture that led to your father's murder, and that indeed serving policemen may have been involved in actually instructing that murder should happen?
Oh no, I don't doubt the construct. I don't doubt the facts. What I doubt are the conclusions. I don't see why I should accept an assurance from Sir Desmond de Silva or the Prime Minister that there was no overarching conspiracy. I mean, if every agency working in Northern Ireland, from the police to the army to the security services and right up to the government, were all aware of threats to people that weren't being passed on and murders that were obviously being carried out subsequently, why should I accept that they're not all part of a larger conspiracy? Or, as the probably more applicable term has come to be applied, part of the collusion network?
Well, the only segment of the power structure that's left out of this is the political leadership in terms of successive secretaries of state. Are you suggesting that either the Prime Minister of the day or a cabinet minister said, go kill Finucane?
I'm suggesting that that remains a live issue, and I'm suggesting that a public inquiry is the only way to resolve that issue. Secretaries of State, although coy, have come on record in recent years to admit that they were briefed directly by the Force Research Unit, the intelligence unit of the army that ran these agents.
With respect,
and therefore, though questions need to be asked of those people as to how much they knew, and why did they not query army intelligence as to how so many murders were still being carried out?
Isn't it time to move on? Isn't it
it's time for a public inquiry?
Well,
that's what it's time for.
The last public inquiry cost £250-something million. I mean, do you really want money spent on that could be spent to redeem perhaps some of the terrible injustices that were perpetrated during the period of the Troubles?
This is a terrible injustice perpetrated during the conflict, and it's been made worse by the successive cover-up of government after government, agency after agency, and an abject refusal to acknowledge or permit a proper public examination of all of the evidence.
Michael Finucane, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, his charge, Secretary of State, is that this is a broken promise, that there should have been a public inquiry. Why wasn't there? Why won't there be?
This review is profoundly shocking. I believe that it tells us the facts about what happened to Patrick Finucane. It tells us the truth about the extent of state collusion, and it is incredibly hard-hitting. It's one of the most, I think, about the most devastating thing I've heard sort of announced across the dispatch box.
But it does clear the political classes, and that's his gripe.
Well, actually, on one point, it definitely doesn't. It is very clear that successive governments failed to put in place the regulatory system needed to deal with agents. Now, that did happen, but he's very clear that it didn't happen soon enough, and that was one of the profound failings identified in this report today.
But given the horror of what is laid out in this report, Isn't there a danger that actually might be much more there than Mr. De Silva's been able to get at?
This Desmond De Silva is an eminent QC with worldwide renown. He's had unprecedented access to a whole range of documents, some of which weren't seen by previous inquiries. They included, of course, 1 million documents as part of a police investigation where 12,000 witness statements were taken. He has done a rigorous job in finding out what happened, and horrific reading is provided in this report.
Well, if Michael Finucane and the family are to stick with this, surely the one thing you do owe them is prosecutions. Now, one of the things that this report says is that ministers were deliberately misled by their officials. Now, those officials are still alive in many cases. Are they going to be prosecuted?
Well, of course, it's one of the many things that went badly wrong was that ministers were misled, and it's important for the
what's going to
police
happen
and for
to these
the
guys?
The police and the prosecution authorities will need to look carefully at the implications of the report.
So tonight there is every possibility that prosecutions will flow from this report.
That's a matter for the decision by the police and the prosecution authorities, but certainly I'm sure that they will want to look carefully at this. It may well be that they decide to investigate all, and it's up to them whether they prosecute.
Secretary of State, thank you very much.